Call to order. Board to reconvene. Let's have a roll call, starting from my left.
Commander Brian Longbottom, U.S. Navy.
Bob Page, County of San Bernardino.
Peter Brown, New West Valley Water District.
Mick Gleason, Kern County.
I had to think who I was, sorry. I was going to say Mick Gleason. Peggy Breeden, City of Ridgecrest. I really am not chemo damaged right now. Thank you.
I'm Matt Kingsley from Minnehaha County.
Thank you. Let's kick off this morning's meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of prayer, silence, and meditation. Ms. Kaczynski, Director of the Water District, has volunteered to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Kaczynski.
Everybody please follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please, everybody, grab an agenda. If you don't have one, they're in the back of the room when you walk in, and you can follow along with us. We'll start off this morning's meeting with the public comments. This time is reserved for the public to address the board on matters not on the agenda. No action will be taken on non-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Anybody wishing to take advantage of public comments, now's the chance. You might want to cue over to the left.
So you know.
Okay, as a member of the public, I keep getting Sustainable Groundwater Management Program.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Renee Westa Lusk. As a interested member of the public, and I also am a member of the Policy Advisory Committee of the IWVGA, I continually get Sustainable Groundwater Management Program updates. I just wanted some guidance on how important it is to go to any of these events that they sponsor throughout the state if we need to have representation at these meetings. That's my comment. I have a question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get you an answer. Next.
Good morning, Board. My name is Mike Neal. I got a document here. I guess I'll just hand it to the gentleman at the end. He can pass it around. I'm going to refer some information. And Mayor Breeden's already got a copy of this and talked about this at the council last night. And what you got on here, and I don't know if you got a copy with, I had to do a couple of different copies, so there's some underlined statements in here. This will be on page 2, 3, and 4. I'm just going to read a few of those. These pertain to documentation I got from county staff, and these were questions that were formulated by, as I was told, by both county staff, at least 2 of the board members, and some other people who worked with them to formulate questions to the potential water resources manager candidates. There was the first round on June the 5th, and this, what I'm going to read it to you, is out of those. There was apparently a second round when there was a down select on that did not have some of these, but these, as I looked through them and read them, understood that these seem to be the thinking of people who actually were thinking along the lines that I was thinking about the potential effects to people in the valley and their water situation and what might happen to them, which spurred my use of a catchphrase in a letter that I've been chastised for, where I used the word water Nazi mechanism. Note I said mechanism, and I didn't use pronouns. I didn't do any personal slant on that. So let me just read you the one that pertains to, seems to be the most drastic one that was in at least somebody's thinking, and that is the question, how will you handle the implementation of a GSP that will most likely involve imposing controversial, contentious, if not draconian decisions to severely restrict pumping? So that seems like somebody's thinking there's going to be some drastic action having to be taken by this board at some time in the near future. And it's my belief that people in this valley should be apprised of this early on, as it takes a long time to educate the public. And there is 1,500 approximate well owners in the valley who may be the most discontented of all about some of the restrictions, things that are being talked about in this document. And so I'm not going to read the rest of them. We'll keep this short. I'm going to leave a couple of copies of this up here for people who might want to get that. And I'm going to request that this board make all of this documentation available on the website so it's readily accessible and people can see what this thinking is going into the process here.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Anyone else? Okay, let's move on to special presentations. Mr. Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We have on the phone two representatives from DWR, Tim Ross and Brian Moniz, and we'll have them. I think Tim is going to start with is going to be the primary speaker. Have them give a short, very short sort of synopsis of where we are or how we're doing. And I told them to be prepared for questions from the board about those comments and other thoughts that the board may have, questions they can ask of DWR. So with that, Tim, Brian, are you there?
Yes, this is Tim Ross.
Yeah, good morning. This is Brian.
Good morning.
We received your questions and have some answers for you. Uh-oh, I have an echo. So just as a preamble, on October 22nd, 2015, Deputy Director of DWR, Dave Gutierrez, and I gave a PowerPoint presentation in your community. The presentation covered the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and the designation of Indian Wells Valley as a basin subject to critical conditions of overdraft. We have a lot of information on our DWR website pertaining to the Act, which we call SGMA, as well as basin prioritization and conditions of overdraft or critical conditions of overdraft and that designation. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Act was enacted in 2014, and it requires local agencies to develop groundwater sustainability plans for all medium and high priority groundwater basins in the state. The plans are due to be submitted to DWR by January 31st, 2020 for basins subject to critical overdraft, and by January 31st, 2022 for all other high and medium priority basins.
Tim?
Yes.
This is Alan. Is that the extent of your remarks? Do you want to go ahead and take questions now?
Sure, I can go into questions if you wish.
Tim, this is Chairman Gleason. Did you finish your remarks, or did you have other things to say?
I think I finished the remarks at this point. We can maybe recap after the question.
Why don't we recap now, and then we'll go for the questions.
Okay, the questions, which we'll get into, wrap around the idea of overdraft and critical overdraft, and how the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act works or deals with those. As I just remarked, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, the groundwater basins subject to that act or responsible to develop groundwater management plans, sustainable groundwater management plans, is by the prioritization process or the priority of the groundwater basin in the state, not directly related to overdraft or critical overdraft. Critical overdraft comes into play on the timing of submitting that sustainable groundwater management plan. So I guess at this point, if you want to go through the questions, that'd be fine.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ross. Before we go to the board, because we're going to have some, well, let's do this one first. I have a person on the board who has a question for you.
Explain to me, you're saying that the prioritization was not based on the overdraft, but was based on the numbers of those people applying. Am I taking that too much further as being critically or overdrafted? I didn't understand the sentence you said, and explain to me what it means.
Okay, the prioritization comes from the legislation which enacted what DWR put together as the CASGM program back in 2009 with Governor Schwarzenegger. The process for prioritization involves 8 or 9 different categories, including population, expected population growth, water use, groundwater use, several different categories, as well as aspects or issues within the basin related to groundwater, including quality or declining groundwater levels. So the prioritization is not directly related to overdraft or critical overdraft. That's considered within the prioritization.
I did understand that. I thought you were trying to say that we were declared overdrafted based on our priority, or critically overdrafted based on the priority, and I thought that was a different set of criteria, that we're overdrafted because we're taking more water out than's coming in. Is that correct?
You're correct. There are 2 different processes.
Okay. Answers my question. My apologies.
So thank you, Mr. Ross, for being here. I understand your comments as to the difference between the CASGEM process and the SIGMA. That CASGEM is just a look and analysis on the basin itself and how we use water. For example, our reliance on groundwater. Here in the Indian Wells Valley, we're 100% reliable on groundwater. So I understand there are all the 8 factors, and somehow those were all put together and reviewed by DWR or some body and made a determination that we are a medium priority basin. My question to you, Mr. Ross, is I would just like for you to, there's been some questions in the community that we've answered before, but I think we need to answer them again, and we may need to continuously go through this because some people aren't understanding it. But could you please review from beginning to end, in a very short period of time, the process that DWI uses to make the determinations in the CASGEM that we are a medium priority basin, and could you go through the influences that Kern County may have had or the city of Ridgecrest may have had, if any, in determining that process, in determining that medium priority?
Okay, as I talked about just a second ago, the CASGEM prioritization process involves many different categories, including water use within the basin, and usually an evaluation of irrigation, agricultural use, community use, municipal use, as well as a look at private individual residential use. So water use in the basin is a big category. Population and population growth are in there. interaction between surface water and groundwater sources and water use in the basin are all pieces of that. DWR tried to put together the best statewide data set for all of the categories, and then use those categories and the amount of water use in the basin to categorize groundwater basins in the state with respect to being high, medium, low, or very low priority. 127 of the 515 groundwater basins in 2014 were categorized as high or medium groundwater basins. And those 127 groundwater basins amounted to 96% of the groundwater use within the state. So that was the process to produce the high and medium groundwater basins that were in play when SGMA became active or was passed in 2014.
Mr. Ross, my final question. Do you believe, or is DWR is convinced that the category that we're in, which is medium, is adequate? And do you believe that the process we used throughout the entire state of California, and specifically the Indian Wells Valley process to make that determination, was fair, unbiased, and untinted by any political maneuvers?
Yes, I do believe so. The CASGEM process did not have, as far as I know, any direct interaction with any of the counties involved in Indian Wells Valley or any of the water agencies when they went through the statewide prioritization process.
Mr. Ross, will you review that determination that we're a medium priority in all basins in California on any periodicity? I mean, every year do you review that list to see if there are any changes to it?
Prioritization is addressed in SGMA, and when DWR revises groundwater basin boundaries, the SGMA, the Act, has DWR reevaluate prioritization. So it will happen periodically, but not on a particular schedule.
Thank you, sir. And you did say that you thought that the medium priority designation for the Indian Wells Valley is adequate and appropriate.
Yes, I believe so. It's very similar to other groundwater basins with similar conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. What I'd like to do now is take a moment to open it up to the public. We have about 40 or 50 people here, and I would like to open the opportunity for anybody in the audience that may have a question for Mr. Ross or DWR on any matter that pertains to DWR and their having to do with the Indian Wells Valley designation, CASGEM, or anything else they're doing. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Ross? Yes, ma'am. We got one comment, Mr. Ross, so stand by.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Board, Mr. Ross, my name is Carol Wilson. I am a member of the Board of Realtors, and I am also a member of the Policy Advisory Committee, subcommittee of the GSA. So I'm understanding you to say that we are a medium priority basin based on data that you received from us. Is that correct?
The sets of data that we have reviewed have come from many different directions. So population comes from census, and there are agencies within the state who make predictions with respect to population growth and things like that. So we used internal state information. DWR has information that we gather about land and water use throughout the state through a variety of methods, including actual driving through areas to map land and water use. We take publicly available information about municipal water use, and we try and make estimations from land use map and from the number of wells in the groundwater basin as to how much residential water use may be used. So the data sets don't come directly from a groundwater basin or the agencies, though we do use publicly available information from many different sources.
Thank you for that explanation. I would suggest that your data is incorrect based on your explanation. For instance, the acreage under agricultural cultivation, I understand, was taken from a map that says an individual farmer owns 160 acres. That amount of acreage is not necessarily the same amount of acreage that is under cultivation. And I also understand that I know that there was a zone change in the Indian Wells Valley that eliminated basically all of the A1 zoning. And there was supposed to be an erratas prepared to reflect the reduction in water usage because of those zone changes. That was never done. And I know for sure that there was a map presented the other night that said that the groundwater or usage was based on property that was contained in the base, an NWC, and that is inaccurate as well. I think that it would behoove the agency and this committee, and Mr. Johnson in particular, to research this information fully before an application is submitted for the grant and before we go any further with this, because this data is not correct. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ross, do you have comments to respond to that?
We try to use the best available information, and when we go through a prioritization process, there's always a public comment period where we produce a draft which goes out for comment about what data we've used and how we've interpreted it. So when the next prioritization comes out, there will be that time period to let us know if we got that data correct or not.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Next up, we have one more, Mr. Ross Vaya, so stand by.
Good morning, Mr. Ross. My name is Elaine Mead. I have two questions that maybe you could provide the information on. In the CASGIM evaluation of our valley, can you tell me which census was used and what that number was for the Indian Wells Valley, and also what the potential growth percentage was applied to that population? Thank you.
Mr. Ross.
I believe the 2010 census was the base census used. To get to the specific numbers, I'd have to delve back into the process that did CAS-GEM. I could produce those numbers. It'll take me some time.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. One more. I don't believe there's any. Are there any other questions? We have one more.
He didn't answer the growth.
Oh, did you answer the growth? Did you answer both questions of Mrs. Mead, Mr. Ross?
The growth, the population growth would have been on the same base census, would have come through state agency, and I can research that and tell you what agency and when they developed those numbers and what the numbers were.
That's okay.
But I'll have to research it.
Mrs. Mead, is that satisfactory?
Yes. Could you provide that information to the groundwater authority and then they can get it to me?
Mr. Ross, great. Thank you very much. Could you please submit that information to the Groundwater Authority and as a public document, and we'll make it available. We'll put it up on our website, and we'll make sure that everybody has the right answers to that. One more question, Mr. Ross.
Yes, Mr. Ross. My name is Mike Neal. Live here in Ridgecrest. I'd like to pose a question as to the how hard the sustainability goal of keeping the aquifer level is planning to be held to. In this valley, we have a level, but that level is also has hundreds of feet of water below that, which I've been informed by people around here have been asking questions that there is good water for hundreds of feet down below that level, possibly not in every area of the basin. However, most of the people, the largest majority of the people in this valley are served by those wells that have hundreds of feet of good water. And then we have the well owners, which, some may have not lots of good water below them, but I believe most of them actually do have at least 100 or 200 more feet of good water down accessible. It would seem that a reasonable GSP plan would be one that wouldn't force us into a couple-year timeline and importing water and severe usage restrictions and so forth and so on to keep an aquifer level, but just to look at it and say, well, we have hundreds of years worth of good water down below us, so what do we do to, work on a much longer timeline, a much cheaper approach, much more reasonable approach, and why would the state not be amenable to something like that?
Okay. The sustainability goal and sustainability goals and indicators and how the basin comes into sustainable management and when the basin reaches sustainability, all of those issues are to be addressed in the groundwater sustainability plan, and it's up to the local system to present how that process constitutes sustainability for the basin. In general, one would not have to keep groundwater levels perfectly level. Many groundwater basins around the state utilize the groundwater basin as one might utilize a surface water reservoir. They allow the reservoir to fill during good times, and then they draw against it when they don't have as much water available. But the overlying issue is whether or not a basin is recharging or it's continually being drawn upon. So most groundwater basins around the state that are operated in those ways have some level, some portion of the basin where they feel that being with the water levels within a particular zone give them enough groundwater to draw on during droughts. And if the water levels get too low, then they don't have that supply that might take them through 5 or 6 or 7 years of sustainable drought. So there are different ways to look at the issue. Keeping the water levels at the perfectly at the same place isn't not exactly necessary. But how that management works in the groundwater basin needs to be fully explained in that groundwater management plan.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Appreciate that. Let's close the public hearing and open up the board. Are any members of the board wishing to ask Mr. Ross or Mr. Munoz a question? Munoz. Okay, I got one. Final one. The problem the public may have or may develop is a lack of understanding of the proper context within which we're working. Could you spend a minute, Mr. Ross, and tell us, the Indian Wells Valley, how we are doing? Are we, where you see our weaknesses? How closely are you monitoring what we're doing? And give us some assurances here that we're not acting like a lone wolf. We're actually doing things that are complying with state law and that we are progressing in a way that is most beneficial to the citizens of this valley.
Okay, I'm on the list where I get the minutes from these meetings, and I'm the agendas of the meetings. My view from a little bit from afar looks like you're doing fine. You have a policy committee in place. You have a technical committee in place. The technical committee is probably really important because they're the ones who are going to be working through the technical aspect of that groundwater sustainability plan. You're holding meetings. You have a GSA in place. So you've satisfied the conditions at this point, the time conditions necessary. You're moving along well. It appeared recently that things were going fine. However, if you feel you need additional support from the state and from our office in terms of people being at meetings and explaining the approach and what's going on, whether that would be at technical meetings or your general GSA meetings, we'd be happy to help with that.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. We're going to count on that. I'm going to suggest to the board for consideration that we make this a routine, that we open this up. I think this has been really valuable for the public to get a perspective from higher authority on exactly where we are, what we're doing, and asking an opportunity to ask specific questions to satisfy their specific concerns. And you asked if there's anything you can do for us. The answer to that is yes. You can approve our Grant 1 funding request, which is on its way, and whatever help we can get from you in developing the most attractive, the most meaningful application would be sincerely appreciated.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Ross. I appreciate your time. Mr. Munoz, thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, that closes special presentations. It brings us to the consent agenda. Items may be removed from the consent agenda for discussion by the board. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. A, approve the minutes of the board meeting September 21st, and B, approve expenditures in the amount of $30,865.56. Any member of the public wishing to pull any of these items off the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 6, adopt ordinance 1017, statutory limits and procedures for claims against the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. Mr. Hall, I believe that's you?
Sure, I can take it. This ordinance is going to be the first read of an ordinance. For those that don't know, you have to have a first read followed by a second read, which is actually when you would adopt an ordinance. It's to really give the public notice. So that's sort of the procedure we'll be following here. This ordinance is really pro forma for public agencies. In fact, I'm not really sure of any that don't have what we call a 935 ordinance, but there's probably some that do. To give you a little background, any lawsuit in tort or contract against the agency has to go through what's called the Government Claims Act. What that really means is that somebody, before they're able to file a lawsuit, has to file a claim with the agency telling you why they think they have a suit against you. And then you have a chance to respond to that claim before they ever get into court. For some, frankly, I don't know the reason why, so I'll just say it's an unknown reason. Maybe there's a reason out there. The Government Claims Act has a section that excludes 15 types of claims against an agency. Most of those will never affect this agency, but there's some that may in the future. For example, if somebody was filing a suit against bonds that we've issued to pay for an infrastructure project to bring water in, or mechanics liens related to the construction of that project, or if we have employees in the future, workers' comp type claims, those can be excluded from they are excluded from the Government Claims Act unless we pass this ordinance, which brings them back in. So right now, that's all we're asking is that you do a first read today. You consider the ordinance. It doesn't change anybody's right to ever sue the agency in the future. It just means that if they were excluded from the Government Claims Act because of the type of claim, they will have to file a claim with this agency before they can file a lawsuit. So the procedure for doing this, because it's an ordinance, is a little bit different. When you do an ordinance, you're supposed to either read the entire ordinance to the public, word for word, or you can exclude doing that by reading the title of the ordinance, opening it for public comment, and then after public comment, motion to waive reading of the entire ordinance and move on to the second reading.
And when is the second reading?
At your next board meeting.
Okay. Okay, so I will read the title, and then I will open the public hearing, and then we will make a motion, and we will listen to the folks. The subject is the first reading of ordinance number 1017, adoption of statutory limits and procedures for claims against the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. I'll open the public hearing, and is any members of the public wishing to make comment on this particular issue? Now's your chance. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I will bring it back to the board, and I'm looking for a motion to waive the entire reading and to move on to the second reading.
I will move that the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority Board waive reading of the entire ordinance 10-17 and direct staff to bring the ordinance back for adoption by this board at our next regular meeting.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Seeing no other comments, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed? No. No one says opposed. Okay, good. Item number 7, report from the... We're going to switch 7 and 8 here, if you guys don't mind. Take a little latitude. Because in terms of being consistent, we've always done the PAC first. Well, we started doing it at the last meeting, so we're going to go with the PAC first and then go to the TAC. So if we could have a report from the Policy Advisory Committee, number 8.
The PAC members took the following actions to make the following requests for the board to address. Number 1, at the combined PAC and TAC meeting held on October 12th, the PAC made edits to the outreach strategy summary paragraphs developed by Lorelei Oviatt. Motion and second made to include the edited summary in the body of the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority letter regarding IWVGA Notice of Intent to develop a groundwater sustainability plan. Motion approved. The PAC also reviewed the 14-point list of components for the outreach strategy. Motion made and seconded to add the list as an attachment to the Notice of Intent letter. Motion approved unanimously. And I'm very glad to say that all the members of the PAC were in attendance at that meeting. Number two, the PAC would like to have more information about how to submit letters of support for the Proposition 1 application, to whom to submit those letters. Number three, the PAC would like to request that the board task the PAC to review comments submitted regarding the Proposition 1 application at its November 2nd, 2017 meeting. And then kind of as a follow-up to that, number five, the PAC members made a motion and second to request that the IWVGA board call a special meeting for final discussion of Prop 1 application on a date after review of the tabulated comments at the November 2nd PAC meeting and before the submission deadline for the application. Motion was unanimously approved. Number four, Scott O'Neill asked that the review of security issues be addressed in the Prop 1 application. Number six, the PAC members would like to have an opportunity to discuss the PAC/TAC procedures document presented by the Water Resources Manager at the October 12th combined meeting. So we ask that this would be put down as a task that we can put on an agenda for the November 2nd meeting. And then I just reviewed the past status of tasks that have been made to us from the board and whether or not they've been addressed as yet. Just a reminder list to keep these things before you. The issue, well, down toward the bottom of the page, request from PAC member Carol Wilson to have a presentation about the Danish groundwater management system and SkyTem. The issue of the appointment of alternates for PAC members that was tabled at the September 21st meeting. The PAC recommendation to appoint Audrey Schuyler to the PAC as a representative for DAC for Trona residents, tabled at the September 21st meeting. And I'd like to make an announcement that there will be a webinar regarding stakeholder public engagement for SIGMA to be held on November the 1st. I think it's from noon till 3. It was in the update sent out by Lauren Duffy, so you can check that for information as to how to sign up to take part in the webinar, and I encourage PAC members to take part if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Appreciate it. Any members of the board before we go to the public?
I'd like to ask
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question. How do we answer number 3? Can staff, they're asking for where to send their comments to, can staff give that information to them? So that way, at least that one is out. And then the other question is, who is going to be responsible for the security of the application and all other items therein? Is that our staff, or how does that happen?
Mr. Johnson, your thoughts on security?
I'm not.
You can take some time to think about
yeah,
that.
no, I'm not sure what the question is on security. I mean, we will be submitting it to the state. It will be a public document when we submit it to the state.
I think the issue was the collection of data that is sensitive data, considered proprietary in some instances by the Navy and other bodies. How are we going to protect any data that's accumulated and compiled in order to form our GSP?
Okay.
And how are we going to manage that security issue?
Okay, and that was a question that came up. I think the base asked the same question,
yes.
And that is more related to, rather than the Prop 1 application, more related to the database itself.
Right. Correct.
And Security is very important, and we'll be working with the base very closely, and landowners too. I mean, we absolutely need this information, but there will be firewalls, there will be protection on the database where only certain individuals have access to certain data. There will also be firewalls that does not allow anyone entering the database to change any of the data. So all of these firewalls, all these protections will be in place at the database for sure.
Thank you. We'll keep close tabs on that. I want the Navy to be appraised of everything and anything that we're doing with data.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen.
Yeah, on number 2, on support letters, we can provide a template for the folks that want to write support letters, and they can just fill in that information. So we'll be happy to provide that to both the chairs of our committees, and they can distribute that so they can get those back to us.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Other questions and comments down the list, I'm sure are going to be, I wrote number 3, number 5, number 6, are going to be discussed by our Water Resource Manager when he gives his comments. So I think we'll get answers to the PAC satisfactory. Answers to the PAC. Okay. Let's open the public hearing. What do you guys think about the PAC comments? Now's the time for you to speak your piece.
Yes, Mike Neal. Just like to address the 14-point attachment A on outreach. There's a lot of things on there. We don't know exactly which ones will be taken advantage of. I'd like to say that I was very pleased at the first meeting that this subject was one of the things brought up at the very first meeting as far as formulating policy, especially in conjunction with my original public comment and some of the people in the Valley's attitudes about what may go on around here. Public outreach is going to be extremely essential so that people can't say, well, they're doing all this to us and we never knew. We didn't get told. We didn't have our chance. Now, as we all know that have been involved in any of these things, a lot of people are still going to say that because they don't bother to read the newspapers. All they hear is what they hear from their neighbors, so forth and so on. However, the effort to reach out needs to be made and is just, slightly under importance to actually formulating the policy. And, of course, you need to formulate good policy so people will be happy with that. 2 of these on the list, I think, just from the little bit of experience I had running for Mayor Ridgecrest and not really wanting to get on Facebook, but finding out that Facebook is actually used quite a bit. A lot of people actually seem to use that for their primary news source these days. So the point of developing a Facebook page, which is really pretty easy, I don't think there's any cost whatsoever when you do have specific things that you really want to flash out to the public. The cost of putting something on a Facebook ad that will reach thousands and thousands of people in this valley is under a couple of $100. It's real cheap. It's cheaper than actually even taking an ad in the newspaper that, like I said, a lot of people don't read, but people will see it. They'll flash it out to other people. Should they share it and so forth? It gets out there a lot. So I highly recommend that in conjunction with referencing a well-made website specifically for this board. Not, what I find that's on the county website is not as easy as I think should be to get to. And so I think there should be a specific one that people can go straight to, and all the information is well placed, put on there, easily accessible. A lot of people will go there, and they will find that information there if it's available.
Did I hear you volunteer?
I don't do websites. You'll have to get some kid that does
Only
that
teasing.
stuff.
Only teasing. Thank you, Mr. Neal. Okay, I don't see any other comments from the public, so we're going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for a comment, discussion. Oh, you want to talk?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well.
Carol Wilson, member of PAC. I would like to point out to the GSA that there have been people volunteer at PAC to do websites and Facebook pages, and we have not been tasked by the GSA to do so. So if you would please task us, we would do that.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you.
We'll work that through our PAC chairman and get her insights on how we want to go about that. Anyone else? Okay, I think I got everybody covered, so we'll bring it back to the board for comment, consideration. Ladies and gentlemen.
I guess I have a question of Mrs. Wilson's request for, you just want that report delivered to only you, a presentation delivered to only the PAC? Are you asking them to come back here because they did make a presentation regarding the Danish groundwater study and also the SkyTem? Are you asking for a specific one only for that, or you want them back here again because they were here, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago?
That request after Don gave his presentation of the PAC meeting at the last GSA meeting. That was quite satisfactory to me, but I would like for us to all be updated on the progress of that because I think that's very important.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson just said that she's satisfied with getting an initial report from Don Zadiba at an earlier meeting, but she's asking for updates as SkyTem becomes more moving along, progress updates, and I completely agree with that. I probably should have said something when I saw that comment on here that you had told me earlier that you were satisfied. Okay, any other thoughts, comments, and I need a vote.
Receive and file.
Do you want a motion to receive and file?
Do we need a motion to receive and file?
We do not need a motion to receive.
Okay, so if there are no further comments, we will move on to number 7, which is the report from the Technical Advisory Committee.
Is this on? Okay. I'm just going through our list for the agenda that we set up and just indicate our discussion that we had with PAC as well, the PAC-TAC meeting. The combined meeting, Donna called it in at 4:20. Problems with getting a conference call set up, so individual cell phones were included by the group members, and also Stetson, thank you very much, where the presentation was made. Tim Parker was introduced as the new TAC member who will represent Indian Wells Valley Water District. We welcomed him. We had a roll call. 9 members were present, 8 of them active there, and then 1 on the phone. There were no public comments at that time for anything specific for the TAC. Approval of August 3rd meeting minutes. There was one suggestion comment. Don Decker asked that the following revisions that were made to August 3rd Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority TAC minutes also be re-included, which was fine. Administrative issues. The 700 form has been signed by all TAC members, and we are prepared. If anybody new is brought in, we will also ask them to do that as well. The ethics training for 3 members was not yet completed. We reminded them the ethics training, as of yet, not quite done. We're kindly reminding you to complete the training, but there is plenty of time that you can do that. Item number 4, review of tasks assigned in the September meeting. The TAC members have provided a project list with recommendations that are regarding for the GSP that will be provided to the IWVGA. After any additional TAC comments are reviewed, compared, and combined, those similar items will also be sent in for final review. Approved items will become official continued assigned discussion tasks on our list during the GSP development for future meetings, along with any new tasks that will be given to the TAC by them. TAC procedures. Alan Christensen advised and indicated a GM report that will invite a DWR representative to come to meetings for assistance. Mr. Christensen also provided an additional Brown Act presentation regarding committees and subcommittees meetings and proper participation and communication. There were good comments and discussions with this. It was re-advised that PAC-TAC members are considered members of the standing committees. Next item, discussion of priority projects and tasks. The first one listed here, water importation discussion. A previous comment regarding importation of water to continue with TAC is simply restated here intended for the IWVGA to be aware of. The TAC is ready to continue within the next 6 months or timing required to meet deadlines for the GSP development. Item B, establishing a database. Stetson engineers presented a recommendation to Authority Plan, which included DWR guidelines and then the Proposition 1 application. Stetson stated they would review any comments by October 17th. However, there is time to offer additional comments in the next TAC and PAC meetings for Stetson application before the final November 13th DWR due date. PAC and TAC members asked for and were given additional time to review the application at the next advisory meetings by November 12th. Stetson is pleased to receive additional data and information, and we were grateful for them for that as well. No additional TAC comments for the existing groundwater model at this time or issues with data gaps at this time. Item number 7, discussion of status of the local California statewide groundwater elevation monitoring or CASGEM program. I was given a phone call with Stan Chen, for the CASGEM, and we had a discussion on this. The monitoring entity will be changed to Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. That will be switched. TAC members will continue to be the administrators. There are 3 of us listed, myself, Michelle Anderson from KCWA, and Stefan Bork with the Navy. The 3 of us also worked with the previous group that had the CASGEM site. So this really won't be a change for us. We're very used to this, and we're happy to assist in this manner. Bi-yearly presentation of the groundwater monitoring and current wells will continue. There are 2 wells that are outside of the basin that no longer need to be included. They will be removed from that, no problems. Also of note, the CASGEM email comments regarding the past 2012 data has been received, and all questions have been answered or are in the progress of being answered for DWR, and they're fine with that. And KCWA has completed the fall 2017 monitoring well system, or sampling, excuse me. They just finished that this week. In addition, cables that were provided by the Navy have been installed in well transducer locations, except for 2 wells. These have older transducers that are no longer properly working. They were purchased 7 years ago and did a good job, but now they're on the point of pretty much dying. So those will be replaced. KCWA has provided new transducers to one of the provided wells, and then we have considered and are going to use an additional USBR well, most likely USBR well number 6. That is our newest location for doing data, and this just gives us additional data through transducers that let us see how well things are going day to day. Future agenda items. The TAC meeting agenda discussion and comments are already listed from up above that we talked about. Stetson Engineering is to provide a presentation with regards to a database for the basin. Number 9, approval of regular meeting dates. This is just a restate for November and December. The meeting will be separate again. PAC will have their own meeting and the TAC will have their meeting. Thursday, November 2nd at 2 p.m. for the TAC, and then Wednesday, December 6th at 1 p.m. And number 10, committee member announcements or comments. I'll just give some quick ones there. I did report for Searles Valley Minerals that they assisted and helped with the Gem and Mineral Show that was done in Trona. That started the 13th and continued for the weekend. It was a great show. It was wonderful stuff to pick up, fall into the brine, and get really brined up, and it was fun. Eddie Teasdale would be happy to provide reviewed TAC agenda items. Don Decker stated the desire for the TAC to reaffirm our need to discuss and review the IWV overdraft conditions. I replied that I will indicate this to IWVGA as well. There were no other additional comments from other members, Wade Major, Tim Parker, Earl Wilson, Michael Powell, Stefan Bork. And just to note, Michelle Anderson, who represents KCWA, she was not present at this meeting. And there are no other comments that were made. And we adjourned with the committee. Motion was made by Don Decker and seconded by Patty Quinn, and that closed the meeting at 7:19.
Thank you, sir. Can we charge Searles for the shout out you just gave him about the Gem and Mineral Show?
Would you like me to shout out more, Major? It was great.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Great report from both of you. Thank you for the TAC report. Let's open a public comment. Anybody wishing to make a comment about the TAC report that we just heard, now's your opportunity. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for comment and consideration. Any comments? This is a receive and file for the TAC. Anyone have any comments?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, sir.
I have a question. Are those going to be those minutes going to be posted on our website? And
Yes,
how are we going to
can.
get that to the public? That report to the public?
That report can easily be listed, put in, and just
Let's do that.
to wherever it would like.
Let's matter of fact, both reports, as a matter of routine, need to be posted to the website that Mr. Deal is going to create, and that we can have an improved method of communication. Okay. Any other comments from anybody? Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 9, Water Resource Management Report. Stetson Engineering. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is probably the item that most of you want to talk about today. First of all, it's good to be back here. It's good to see all of you people. I'm getting to know a lot of people now, which is really nice, and I'm enjoying myself very much. I want you guys to know that. The combined PAC and TAC committee meeting was an interesting meeting. We got a lot done. We covered a lot of area. Appreciate everybody's input and comments at that meeting because we covered a lot of ground on a lot of things. But I think as Supervisor Gleason, Chairman Gleason suggested, it was a good exercise to bring everybody together and see what everybody's doing. So, and I appreciated seeing everybody work together. It was my first PAC meeting, so that worked out well. On the Prop 1 application, we'll probably cover this toward the end, but there was a comment made from Donna on the PAC committee report about a request for a special board meeting. I think I understand that we're going to be talking about at least reserving a date, so you have that, so there's some consideration for possibly doing something like that. Right now, I'm going to go through a few things about the Proposition 1 application and the comments that we've received. Right now, we're good, not necessarily having a special meeting. I think we've got some very, very good comments, very constructive, very beneficial, and we're implementing those comments. I'll give you some more information on that shortly. If we don't need to have a special meeting, it makes sense necessarily not to have one because they are expensive, and we're trying to keep a budget, and it does cost money and time to do those things. So I think there'll be a discussion the board may have later on. But just to let you know, because it was brought up in the PAC report that there was a request made during that meeting. I was certainly there too. Overview on what we've been doing. My staff's a little mad at me right now because I told them I need to have responses to comments out before this meeting. We got comments in. You guys did a great job. I mean, I got to hand it to all of you folks. You guys did a great job getting comments to us. You were a little late on some. I mean, I say pretty great job. The deadline was the 17th. We got a lot of comments in on the 17th. Even after 5 o'clock, we got comments in. We got some more in on the 18th. But I had given my staff instructions based on discussions we had about how to go to the next step, that we needed to review all those comments internally and talk about them, make sure we had responses to all of those comments. We need to tabulate those comments as we go through them. We need to understand what the comment was. We had to develop what we thought was an appropriate, reasonable response to each of those comments. We're not moving to the Prop 1 application yet because we don't want to do that twice. But we needed to do all that, and then we needed to assemble those comments and responses in a format that we could release as soon as possible because we're having a board meeting today. And I originally indicated to Alan that I thought we would have those comments out by noon. My staff knew it, but they never told me that was not realistic, which I complained about to them. I said, you should have told me. I could have modified it. Then I was told later on that would be by the end of the day, and then it got to be that it was going to be 7 o'clock. And I talked to them at 7 o'clock, and finally they said they'll be out shortly. I think they got done about 8 o'clock last night. We did distribute all of the comments and responses about 8 o'clock last night. I apologize. I think the email apologized too. I apologize for the short notice. I don't think it's that big a deal. Really, we have more. There was a stack of the comments and responses that Lauren was nice enough to prepare for us and have them here today. I didn't even get them because I was at home by 8 o'clock. And I tried to print there's 28 pages. I tried to print them, and my printer ran out of ink at about 3/4 of the way through, so I didn't even have them last night. So I got my first look at the final comments this morning. But they did get them out. There's going to be more time. I think the comments were all good. The responses to comments, I think, generally respond to the comments that were provided. The general consensus that we've got from the comments, I gotta say, I don't have to say too many times that they were all very, very good, very, very constructive comments. There were almost two kinds of comments. There were and most of them were comments about the structure and the format and moving money here or there and doing different things as far as the application. And those were all good. And part of those comments really do apply to making the application stronger. And there's another set of comments that we looked at and really, I mean, we paid very much attention to because this is our goal, and that is the comments that relate to making that application, Prop 1 application for funding as absolutely strong as we can. And we're committed to that. I'm committed to that, to make that application as strong as we possibly can. You folks are familiar with Kennedy Jenks and the work they've done, and we work with Kennedy Jenks on other projects. We're very familiar with their work. We've done a lot of applications for funding. Kennedy Jenks has done a lot of applications for funding. We have reached out, and we're going to reach out again to Kennedy Jenks to make sure that the areas that they feel are, and anybody else who wants to add more comments to us, to make sure that the areas that they feel are most important to make this the strongest application possible, that they are in there and they're properly referenced and they're properly presented. So we're still going to do that. We didn't have time to do that between the 17th and today, but I've talked to Derek and we'll try to make that connection probably next week and just walk through them again and make sure that application is as strong as possible. So that's the goal. I mean, the goal is a strong application and get as much funding as we possibly can for this project going forward. So that's sort of the overview. There is a handout over there too. That's just an overview of some of the things that are related to the Prop 1 application. I'll just walk through it a little bit. The initial application was distributed back on October 10th. A revised draft was distributed on the 11th. We made some changes. Comments were supposed to be provided by the 17th of October. We did get some on the 18th. That's fine. The application, a question was asked earlier. The application is actually due on November 13th. Well after the next PAC and TAC committee meeting, so there is an opportunity, one-on-one, and an opportunity to have some more discussion too before we actually submit. We received comments, a lot of comments from a few people, and that's fine. It worked out fine. We received 3 sets of comments from the Water District, from Don and Tim Parker as a consultant, and I want to make sure we let everybody know that we worked with Tim before. Tim's comments were very constructive. Everything that was provided we look at as very constructive and very helpful. So I want to make sure we point that out. Mr. Decker, Don Decker, provided 2 sets of comments. Mr. Page provided comments. West Kenzenstein provided comments, separate from Tim Parker's. Don provided comments. Donna Thomas provided comments. Excuse me. And Stan Rotorta provided comments, and we got some from Kennedy Jenks too. So those are the folks we got comments from. A total of 110 comments, and that 110, the way it was formatted, if I'm wrong, somebody can correct me, but the last time I saw the format, because I didn't see it, I looked at it this morning, there were several duplicate comments. So where there were duplicate comments, we provided one comment that just gave references to multiple people who provided us either the same or a similar comment. So literally 110 individual comments that we responded to in 28 pages. Comments. And I wanted to hit just a couple of the more important items, and these are on the hand, the more important items of comments and responses that were received and then provided back. And we put it at the top right here. The priority and importance of imported water study will be emphasized in the work plan. We got several comments about imported water and the importance of imported water. Understand that the way the application was formatted, imported water wasn't at the top, but the way the application was originally formatted, and we are going to make some changes because we take those comments, the way it was originally formatted was consistent with the format from the state, and the state had certain things that they wanted formatted in a certain order, and this fell toward the bottom. It was not formatted in a matter of priority, and the state's aware of that. And not only we are going to emphasize that these items that are included in the application, that they're not in a priority, but we're going to make an emphasis on what is a priority in the application. So we're going to address that. Additional detail will be added in the work plan regarding development of sustainability criteria. I think we got those comments from Tim Parker and from Kennedy Jenks. Including undesirable results, minimum thresholds, sustainable indicators, and interim milestones, including the stakeholder decision-making process. These are all components of the GSP. And we know that, and the state knows that, but the comment really was to make a little more emphasis on those items and get them right up front, so they're presented, the more prominence in the application. Water efficient appliance incentive program, leak study and repair project for Category 1 will be added. I think Mr. Page provided some comments on that, Director Page or Board Member Page, regarding to disadvantaged communities. We don't have a whole lot of time, and you typically have to develop a work plan around these kind of programs. We have a lot of contacts. Maybe we're going to be checking with Don to see what you guys have. The easiest way to do this is to look at these kinds of programs. These are conservation programs, leak detection and incentives programs for appliance and things and shower heads. Those are all great programs. We're going to be checking with the Water District to see what programs they have, what you guys may already have, to make sure something like that's included as a work plan. We also have lots of other clients, municipal agencies who have work plans. So our goal would be to prepare a work. I don't want to put a whole lot more work into that application, but we would generally use a work plan from another agency, something that's already been accepted and been used. And if we can't get something we like, then we'll likely just bullet point a work plan around that thought and that recommendation. Additional detail on TAC PAC and public involvement will be added to the GSP work task. That was a comment that we wanted to provide more information because outreach is clearly important. It was in there, but it's going to have more prominence, more emphasis. And we also, and this was a question I've been raising with my folks from the start, is why aren't we asking for $1.5 million? I mean, that's the most we can get. In fact, I would say, why can't we ask for more? And I was told that it doesn't do any good to ask for more. That's all you're going to get. So we are going to increase the amount to make sure we don't leave any money on the table. We'll be modifying the grant application with the application of the funds for the different projects and ask for the full amount. So we'll be going for everything we can get. So that's an overview of the comments. There was one other item that was talked about at the PAC at the TAC meeting. And I just want to do it briefly because we spent a lot of time on it there, and we're fully aware of what the concern was. It has to do with the disadvantaged communities map that we had with the application. And I want to make sure everybody's aware that our goal in this, again, I'm going back to what we said before, but our goal in this application is to try and get as much money as we can and try to reduce the local matching as much as we possibly can, including for the disadvantaged communities, because the designation as a disadvantaged community reduces the local match, which is good for all of us. We understand that there's some inconsistencies in that map, and we knew it before. We've got the maps from the other applications that have been made. They're all consistent. But this is a state tool that the state will use. They'll go to their own references to look for disadvantaged communities. So our intention still is, you'll see one of the responses, is still to submit it with the actual documents that the state provides to identify disadvantaged communities. we feel that gives us, and we're not submitting it until the 13th, but we feel that gives us the best opportunity using the state's own information to get a favorable decision from the state regarding the disadvantaged communities for as much, as little for them to award us as much money as possible and require as little matching money as possible, using their own information. So that's where we're headed with that. That's all I was going to talk about with the comments. Like I said, there's 110 comments. Folks, look through them. We're going to be reaching out a little bit to certain folks. We didn't receive that many comments, so reaching out to different people, a lot of comments just to certain people. Reaching out if there's any questions. Certainly, if you're reading a response and you think it wasn't responsive, let me know and we'll connect that. We have time to do this. And we'll also have the November 2nd to make sure we're all on the same page. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Any members from the board, including you, Donna, before we go to the public?
I just wanted to note the bottom there that Mr. Johnson will also provide updates at the November 2nd PAC meeting.
Yes, right. Thank you.
I have three.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The first one is, once it's submitted on the 15th, will there be any alterations allowed after the submittal?
Typically, typically they do. Typically what happens is they will have comments, they might have some suggestions, they may have some clarifications. Typically, if there's additions, it would be as a result of questions that the staff may have, clarifications, more detail they may want to look for, something like that, and then they would allow something to come back. I would not discount the fact that if we had something else we wanted to submit after the date, that we could still get it in, even if it was not in response to a question they had. So you definitely have a period that you work with the staff before they make their actual decisions on awards.
Okay, the second question is, you said your staff asked, and this is my question too, why don't you just apply for the total $1.5 million? And my reasoning is that even if they don't award us, maybe they only award us $1.4 million. Right. We have the extra money that can be used, that they recognize the value of what we've done and shown to go to other grants that they may be administering. I understand if we only have a need for $100,000, why would we ask for $1.5 million? And so help me understand why there isn't an advantage to apply for every dollar there is. I agree with you. There absolutely is. And along those same lines, we've worked with the state before, and sometimes, when we gave the presentation at the PAC and TAC, one of the things we described was the amount of money allocated to these critically overdrafted basins, right, and the number of basins. And it works out. It works out very close that, if everybody applies for the $1.5 million and everybody gets it, there's not enough money. But it's not that far off. Maybe 80%. If we already got 80%, we would all get funding at 80%. And most likely, not all applications will apply for the full 1.5. Some just don't have the need for it. So what happens a lot of times at the state is once they get all the applications done and they get them all laid out there and they don't know how much money they have, a lot of times they will just prorate everybody. If they're all good applications, prorate everybody down the same amount. So we want to start with as much as we can. All right. And the third question, the map. There was considerable discussion at the PAC and TAC meeting about that. And as was pointed out, I don't recall from whom, that there's a disadvantaged community on the base. And I guess my reason is, I know that's the state's map, yes, but if we're going to use that, I would like to put disclaimers on there so that map that is clearly incorrect doesn't get used to generate responses to why we couldn't or shouldn't have done something. I don't want that, because you don't know when that map is going to be used somewhere else to find out that the base is disadvantaged, or any other areas that clearly weren't disadvantaged but were identified. So if we can make the changes on there. Okay. Those were my three questions.
Okay, yes, Mr. Page.
If I could seek a little bit of additional discussion or clarification on a couple things that the mayor raised. regarding asking for the full amount, one of the things I think I saw in here, I don't remember if it was a response to the comments or if it was in the draft PowerPoint presentation that you made to we're going to make to us or had made to the PAC and TAC. There was reference to seeking a waiver of a portion of the one-for-one match, local match requirement. And so could the grant application be presented, because the total program is $2.9 million. Could we show the total cost, request a grant amount of 1.5, but at the same time not request that we have to match 1.5 because of the DAC? Is that the way? I mean, right now the way it's been presented was you had 1-for-1 exactly on the amounts. But if you get a waiver, then I saw it mentioned to then really because the maximum total is 1.5, we couldn't get a waiver for more than 19 or 1,000 or whatever because we were so close to 1.5. But am I remembering that was in here somewhere, right?
Yeah, you're remembering it correctly. And hopefully for clarification, what you described is exactly what we're going to do, is we're going to submit the application with the intent to ask for the full amount, but also at the same time ask for a waiver of as much matching funds as we can. So they'll both be in there.
Okay, and currently I also read that the amount of match that isn't currently covered by in-kind services that have been already provided or will be provided by agencies in the Valley is about $400,000, I think.
Correct. Right now, that's in the current application. We are getting comments in, so that could change a little bit. But you are correct.
Okay. And then the other comment about the mayor's request regarding the maps and adding a disclaimer where we know an area is not disadvantaged. I think what we need to keep in mind regarding those maps is that the boundaries of those shapes are based on some area defined by the census. So it doesn't mean that there are people living in every part of that shaded area that are making below the income amount. It just means that the census has decided this is a census group, this is a census tract, this is a census place, and so that's how it gets drawn. I don't know that those maps, that if we include those maps, that we're in any way try to tell the state that we've got poor people on the base. So I just want to be careful about that, because I get what you're saying, but at the same time, we're basically using whatever geographical shape that the census came up with.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Page. I'd like to just. Did you have something?
Yep.
Please.
I just want to, for the record, weigh in that Inyo County is watching with great interest. The issue of imported water and Mr. Decker's comments, and just want to make sure that as we go forward, that is something that will be controversial and maybe even unifying in Inyo County as we talk about that. So and I think it's just important that we get on the record that that's something that we are, as you prioritize that or where that goes and how that gets presented will be important to us.
Thanks, Mr. Kingsley. Mr. Brown.
On the in-kind services, the money we haven't spent yet but will for the SkyTem, I think we'll be spending like $375,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
So that could be added to the in-kind services, maybe. And I'm not sure I saw the brackish water study on there as well, but I'm sure those two would help buck up the offset quite a bit. Don can tell you the exact number from the water district.
If there's a reason why it doesn't work, I'll let you know for sure.
Just wanted to make we haven't spent it yet, but we could write a check right now so it has been spent, and then you can be honest about it.
Okay.
So let me sum up real quick what I think you talked about in terms of schedule moving forward in terms of the Prop 1 grant application. You're asking us to approve conditionally a grant application that you have developed. You have taken 110 comments from people who have forwarded them. You have brought those 110 comments into the development of the existing plan that's before us. You're going to continue to take public input and develop it and integrate it into the application. You're going to have a public review of the grant application on November 2nd at the PAC meeting.
And
TAC meeting. And then we're going to put in as a placeholder another special meeting of this board. And what date on that is going to be, Ms. Christensen?
I'm not sure. Excuse me. I'm not sure if we have a date
We will
yet.
develop that. We don't have that date. Just in case we need to have another board. We're hopeful not to have another board meeting. We're hoping that this moves forward. But if something happens in the process and we need to reschedule, then we will do that. Is that am I summarizing your statements?
That's correct. Thank you.
And for the board's benefit, it would be so that they could be thinking about it. If we do this, it would be after the PAC meeting on November 2nd. So between the 2nd and the due date somewhere.
And there'll be adequate notice and all that kind of stuff. We're not anticipating that meeting. We're not looking forward to that meeting. I hope we don't have that meeting because of the costs associated with that meeting. We have a strict budget we're trying to live within, but if there is something that has to come up, then we will do what we have to do. Okay, let's open up the public hearing on 9A and see if any member of the public has comments regarding 9 Alpha. West Kirsten Stumer. How did you pronounce your last name?
Like I said before, it's a combination of Katzenjammer and Frankenstein. It's Katzenstein. Wes Katzenstein, I'm a member of the PAC. Just a couple quick comments regarding the maps of the disadvantaged communities. We should probably also bear in mind that we're in competition with other GSAs, and if they're all using similarly distorted maps, we don't want to handicap ourselves by giving away too much. So I like the idea of the caveats that these may not be accurate, but go forward with them. Another comment I wanted to make, just looking at the handout provided by the Water Resource Manager, looking down here at a sub-bullet, I'm going to read this. Additional detail will be added in the work plan regarding development of sustainability criteria, undesirable results, minimum thresholds, sustainable indicators, and interim milestones. And I'm assuming, in my mind, this is where the rubber really meets the road. This is the guidance that will set the plan and where we go and when we get there. And I expect, and maybe I'll pose this as a question, I'm assuming that that guidance needs to come from the GA, that we're not asking the Water Resource Manager to come up with that guidance. And if that is accurate, then I'm thinking that it would make sense for you guys to task the PAC to address these questions so that we can receive the public input and have the dialogue with the public. And if a member of the public comments on these indicators, that we can do more than just include those comments in the minutes to you folks, but rather we can also discuss it. So I'm going to suggest that in the future that you guys consider adding that in some form or another as an agenda item for the PAC, and certainly for the TAC. In fact, I think the TAC in their last meeting kind of made a similar point. They gave a list of items they think they should be tasked to consider, and it really addresses this list. Once again, I think this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the leadership will occur, and it probably makes sense to get the PAC and the TAC involved in that. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any other comments?
Judy Decker, private citizen. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Would you convey my thanks to your staff? I think they have worked very hard for us. I have a comment that no one has brought up, and I think they've brought it up because they presumed that they were going to have the information already. And that is the USGS recharge study. We were supposed to have it last month. We all presumed that we were going to have it this month. Still don't have it. Recharge is a critical part of the picture. And I think, personally, I think you need that information even before you submit the application. But it doesn't look like we're going to have it, unfortunately. And I think you need to put on your list of things to do, perhaps additional recharge work. We need that information to make intelligent decisions. What happens, for instance, if the number for the recharge in this valley is a lot less than has been estimated? The climate is changing. The climate's always changing. We have lived here 48 years, and it has really gotten a lot drier. We do not get the rain that people who live west of the Sierra Nevada mountains get. Our average is 2 to 4. Last year it was just a little over 2. And so I would ask you to chew that one up, maybe bring it to the TAC, not the PAC, and consider it. Hopefully, Mr. Christensen can get the USGS here. Perhaps if you do have a special meeting, they can come to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Decker. Anyone else? Seeing nobody, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for comment and consideration on 9 Alpha. What's the motion we're looking for, Mr. Christensen?
I think you're looking for a motion to approve the Proposition 1 grant application as presented or as documented by Water Resource Manager, and direct him to continue to incorporate any changes appropriate for the application, and also with the caveat that if there's any substantive changes, that you would come back with a special meeting between the 2nd and the 13th.
Thank you, sir.
To the board.
Appreciate it. Mr. Page.
Mr. Chairman, I think the question for the board is how comfortable we are giving certain level of authority to the Water Resources Manager. Is it limited authority? Is it are we comfortable with the responses to the 110 comments and how he has indicated he will update the application, and we're okay with just directing him to do as he's indicated, and then if the PAC and the TAC ask for anything substantive outside of these, that would necessitate a meeting? Or are we comfortable allowing him to, as Mr. Christensen put, make additional changes that may not have been presented to us yet, that the Water Resources Manager believes is appropriate and necessary to improve the quality of the application?
Thanks, sir. I have a comment. Personally, I am. The answer to that is I am comfortable in Stetson doing his job, and not telling him how to do his job, just get it done. However, any changes made to the approved document that we're going forward today, I think it's appropriate for you to forward those comments to all board members for our consideration, so that we could throw out the idea if one of us has a problem with it, we can assert that issue and then make adjustments as necessary as we go.
The other question I had is that the Water Resources Manager's response to one of my questions about whether there was an opportunity to also apply for a Category 1 grant for projects that benefit severely disadvantaged communities. He indicated he would discuss some issues with the water district and try to quickly evaluate that. That grant application in itself is not something we've even seen a substantially completed draft of. So I'm not sure how we might proceed with that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Johnson, any idea?
Yeah, the part that I was going to be talking to Don about, or even look at our resources, is really the work plan around that comment. So they're pretty standard work plans. How you reach out to the community, how you bring the community in to get involved in those kind of programs. It's pretty standard. My only comment about doing that was that I didn't want to spend a whole lot more staff time developing a new program, but there's programs out there. That's all. So it shouldn't be anything that you haven't seen before and it's been used to same kind of documents at all municipal agencies that have conservation programs.
And I appreciate that, but I'm presuming that this would have to be a separate application for grants because it's a different category of funding.
They're all going to go. It's going to go together.
Okay.
They will go together
as a package.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the grant application will identify we're requesting $1 million here for projects supporting severely disadvantaged and $1.5 million here for development of our GSP, which benefits the entire basin and all users of water in the basin.
That's correct.
Okay.
Ms. Page, I sense that there's an issue you may have with that particular issue. Are you satisfied with the decisions we're making here?
Yeah, no, I am. I'm just trying to get to kind of lay it out. We have a certain process at my agency in terms of what kind of delegated authority we give and the limit to that.
Right.
Because the Board of Supervisors maintains that authority at all times. So I wanted to make sure I just was kind of walking through it and understand, how much latitude we were giving him.
Could you do me a favor then? Could you please articulate in your own words what you understand to be the direction we just gave the Mr. Johnson?
Yes, I could. Did you want to say something?
I just want to, if I might, I'm not intending to make going forward, any unilateral decisions on this.
That's probably smart.
Yeah. I'm not going to use personal judgment and make a change to that application right before it goes in that you folks don't know about. I would not do that. So.
Okay. So, how I would make the motion then, and open to amendment if I don't get this quite right, is that the board approve the Prop 1 grant application that is presented to us as substantially complete in the amount, should I put the amount in? Because your slide presentation had $1,480,700, but you're potentially going to increase it, so I'll take the amount out. So approve the Prop 1 grant application as presented to the board as substantially complete, with revisions to be made by the Water Resources Manager as in response to the comments that have been received from the PAC and the TAC and as may be received still from the PAC and the TAC, and that the final grant application will be presented at least as informational to the board before it's submitted after the PAC and the TAC meeting, and in sufficient time that should a member of the board have a concern or an issue that they would like the full board to discuss, that still gives us time to call a special meeting of the board before the deadline of November 13th. And I was also contemplating adding that we additionally authorize the Water Resources Manager to make additional changes to the application after it's submitted as are requested by DWR to ensure the application is deemed complete.
I agree with your comments. That's my understanding of our conversation is. Is that everybody else's understanding?
Yes, I would only ask that instead of trying to bring everybody down here to have a meeting, can we have the meeting here and everybody who is far away and not spending the money, can we do it by call-in? Because if we do have a meeting, I think it's appropriate that we have that opportunity. And I had promised our council I was going to ask for that and how we do it. And I don't want to have a meeting just to have a meeting. I want to have a meeting because we're going to make a decision that there was substantial changes. So if they weren't, then, and we're all happy with it, and the PAC and the TAC are happy with it, I'm happy with that. I'm obviously very happy.
We're happy. Well, yeah. I'm happy with you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sure the lawyer will have something to say about this.
Having a meeting with call-ins, having a meeting with call-in board members is perfectly doable as long as we have a quorum of the board here, and those that are calling in are at a location that members of the public can attend if they wished.
And those locations have to be published on the agenda.
Yeah, we'll have to do some agenda stuff, putting it on the agenda and getting out notice and that. But
thank you, Mr. Brown.
I like your really long stated motion, and I'll second it if you need one. I have great confidence. You're already talking to Parker and Kennedy Jenks in the TAC. You already have your 40 or 60 years of history. You've already given us this incredible matrix in a very short time. I have a great faith that whatever the final product you have will be just fine. I don't see us as really being any better at critiquing a document like that. That's not my thing. So I agree to the motion you made, and I'm sure the final product will be perfect, especially that you're coordinating these additional comments. Like Kennedy Jenks had some really good points. As long as you incorporate those, we're good to go. So I'm good with that.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments before I call for a vote? Mr. Page.
Yeah, just in looking over my notes that I wrote up after reviewing everything, I forgot to mention one additional comment I thought of after the comments were shared, which I just want to get on the record so that the public can hear what this additional question was, is that one of the items in the work task is a recycled water study. And in reviewing the description of that study, there was a lot of description about the recycled water opportunities within the basin itself, in the city of Ridgecrest and the base. And what I would like to ask is that because I believe, and I'll preface this, because I believe that we need to have as much information as possible as a board, so that when the actual GSP document itself and the plan is developed, we know all the different options we have available to us, what those cost of those options would be, so that we can make a most informed decision about how to get the most out of our money and the money of the people in this community to sustainably manage this basin. So I just believe we need to make sure we're looking at everything we can and try to put a price tag to it so we can make informed decisions in the end. So I would like to also suggest that the recycled water study not just look at the opportunities within the basin itself, in the city and the base, but also to at least evaluate how much recycled water might be available within the community of Trona to help potentially lessen their dependence on water from the basin. My gut is that there's not enough effluent coming out of that community to justify such a capital expense, but I believe we at least need to know what the number is so we can make that decision, not just based on gut. So I just wanted to make sure I got that out there, that I thought that study should include looking at Trona as well.
Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, in fact, Bob and I talked before the meeting. We have that.
Great.
Thank you, Bob.
Mr. Kingsley.
I'll strengthen my support of the motion. I do think this is a really important step that our board's taking, and so it is important that we have the opportunity if we need to. I agree we don't want to have a meeting for no reason, but this is important, and it not only sets us the sort of the base for the money, but it also sets our direction on our plan. So I do think it's important that we have the opportunity if we need to have a meeting. I'm not looking for another trip to Ridgecrest, but if that's what it takes, let's make sure we have it.
I agree with you. Okay, seeing no more board comments, I have a motion. I have a second. I'd like to have a vote on item 9A, approval of, well, we had the motion already. I need a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes. 9B, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If some of you saw me sweaty here and I'm looking at my phone, it's because I have a very short report on the model update, but I got it on my phone and I just got low battery and things about ready to go off. So my short presentation is still here. I was going to try to. It's good. It's still here. We're good. Anyway, this is just an update. Those of you who are at the PAC and the TAC, two of my staff, two very, very important people in my staff, Steve Reich and Jean Moran, were there. Steve gave a presentation on the database. Jean Moran was there too. She's working on reviewing the DRI model. They were both there. They did fly up. He has an airplane. They did fly up, so they flew over the area, took some pictures, and got an overview of the whole area before he came up. They spent the day out on the base, drove about 75 miles. Oh, wow, look there.
Wow, what a guy. I don't want you sweating.
This is serious technology. We're IT. drove the entire base, took a lot of notes, a lot of information. No pictures. There were no pictures taken, but got a lot of information. So they spent quite a bit of time up here. And you got to meet them, which is good, and they'll be back. On the model itself, the DRI model, and the update we've got, I'll just give a quick update. On October 9th, our staff, I didn't do it, but the staff working on the model, met with DIR modelers at the DIR office in Las Vegas, discussed the recent field work that had been done and updates to the model that DRI has been doing, which is good. We requested from DIR and the Navy a letter report documenting updates to be included in the review. In other words, what are they doing going forward? For us to understand, we are getting to understand what the model can do now. They're talking about some updates. For us to understand what we might ask them to do, we want to see what they're proposing to do. So that's the coordination. Let us know what you're proposing to do so we can pull that together and then possibly make some recommendations going forward about what we think we may want to work with you folks on to update the model. Then on October 12th, which is the what I just described, which was the last PAC and TAC meeting, both Steve and Gene went on a 3.5-hour geologic tour of the China Lake Naval Weapons Station, which I just described. Site visit included mountain front recharge areas, which were very important. They were impressed by the mountain front recharge areas, wastewater ponds, wetland outfalls, fault zones, production wells, and all other hydrogeologic features of the base. So this was good information. They were both actually very excited to go on that tour. They got a lot of information and learned a lot just on that tour. So status and next steps, there's a couple things that are coming up. We've already completed the review of historical hydrogeologic and modeling documents. So we've got that's all done, and we're documenting that. The review memo on the model is currently being written, so we should be able to bring that back out as a draft and then probably bring it to the TAC and have people look at it at the TAC. It's being written right now. And the model review will be completed and presented, like I mentioned, probably to the TAC. We haven't set it up yet, but probably to the TAC first and then ultimately back to the board. And so that's an update on the modeling work.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any comments from the board before I go to the public? Let's open the public hearing. What do you people think about 9B? Any comments?
I should sit closer to the front. The report that's going to be...
Mrs. Wilson.
Oh, Mrs. Wilson. Yes, I am. The report that's going to be prepared should be sent to all the interested parties, not just the board. Is that okay?
Hold on for a second. I don't understand your exact question. The draft modeling?
Yes.
Modeling review report. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We would not just send it to the board.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
I may have misspoke, but yes, that's true.
Okay, let's close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for a motion. I think this deserves a motion. Personally, I think this is probably one of the most important things we're going to be doing in this whole deal is this modeling program. What does everybody on the board think?
What are we motioning to do? To continue to fund it? Is that what you're asking, or what are you asking?
Could you please say what is the motion we're asking to do? Approve the current, or it's just...
I think it's really just a receive and file. We've already authorized to move. We're going forward, and we'll be coming back with some results. So we're moving forward.
Okay, so that's a receive and file, and does not need a vote because it's not important.
It is. It is.
Only kidding.
One other comment, if I might. Thank you to the Navy. You guys are incredible. My folks, Steve and Gene, had nothing but raves about working with you folks and with the DIR staff. Absolutely very cooperative. It's going to be good. So we're very happy to be working with you.
Much appreciated. We enjoyed the trip. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander. Appreciate it. Item number 10. Oh, do we need? No, we don't. Item number 10, General Manager's Report.
My goal is to be done in less than 4 minutes. That will be noon. We sent a letter to DWR, a letter of intent to develop a groundwater sustainability plan. We had help from the PAC in developing language on the outreach that we included in the letter, and they provided an attachment that detailed that, so that was great. We appreciate their help on that. That went out this week. Kern County Water Agency will be here next meeting in November. They just updated their recent measuring activities yesterday, so they will have the most up-to-date activity, groundwater activity to report. They have a nice graph that shows that activity, and so they will be here next meeting. USGS has committed to come in November. Just addressing a comment that was made by the public earlier. Let's be clear, they are not done. So, and their contract did not include visits, but they're obviously willing to do that. But a USGS report will be interim. We will not have any. The report will not be done unless something happens, a miracle happens. But they still have some time. So, with that in mind, I'm trying to keep my minutes here. I know there's a great desire to move quickly on certain things, and it's hard to be patient with processes. But we do need to be patient and wait for whatever's in the oven to cook. And so we got to wait till it's ready, and so it's not ready yet. But USGS will give us a status report, but it will not be complete, as far as I know. So just to not set up expectations that you'll get something that is complete that we can act on. We will not have that next month. December will be a transitionary month. The administration of this agency will be shifting to the city. We are in the midst of having meetings and transitioning that. Just FYI, my role, I think Mr. Hall's role will be to step back, and then the city, we assume the city, whatever transition will occur next year, you will see some different faces. We're happy to do this, but it's time. So, and I think our agency's in good, we have a rhythm. We're not perfect yet, but we have a good rhythm, so I'm confident that we'll figure this out. 1 minute left. I think we've resolved the Form 700 issues, but you will have a change to there will be a shift in some membership on the PAC and the TAC, and some additional Form 700s that will be required, but I think we've resolved most of those, except for one, and BLM is not here, and I think they have, if they haven't, do you do anything from BLM? Okay. So we'll work that one out. They're a non-voting member, so it's not as, we'd still like to have that Form 700, but they don't vote, so it's not as critical. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. Open to the public. Any comments on the General Manager's report? Seeing none, we'll close that. And that's a receive and file, so there will be no vote on that. Closing comments. Board members. Anyone?
I would like to publicly thank the PAC and the TAC chairs and their members who have done an extraordinary job. I know that it is a labor of love and desire, but I think also that you generally have a want to fulfill what needs to be done here. Public input, technical input, so we can have the most perfect, I'm going to use that word, perfect plan when it comes. But these people, individuals who are not receiving any benefit, have gone above and beyond, and I thank them very much for the work. I'd also like to thank the Kern County Water Agency. They continue to do it silently from an area that most people don't know, unless you're an individual well owner, know that the work that is done by them, and all of the people there, our board, and the local Michelle Anderson and her staff make it happen. And I am truly grateful for what they do. Information that could not be gathered anyway and accept it as fairly from there, because they truly are nonpartisan. It's not like the rest of us are, but they have no skin in the game other than to provide facts. So I thank them. That's my public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to adjourn this meeting on a motion and retire to closed session when we have one litigation issue to discuss. We're adjourned.